Before you watch this episode of our City Current radio show, I want to invite you to join City Current's e-learning and online personal development platform called Growth Current. I'm Jeremy Park, host of the City Current radio show and CEO of City Current. Growth Current is your exclusive ticket to attend virtual events with global thought leaders, national guest speakers, and experts who can help you grow personally and professionally. It gives you access to success secrets, lessons learned, learning modules, and so much more. Being online, you can join us from anywhere in the world. Subscriptions are only $8 a month, or you can do bulk subscriptions for your team. Check out growthcurrent.com to learn more and to join us in our efforts to power the good. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, powering the good in our community. And we get to kick it off with a little bit of history. We get to talk about Victorian Village, CDC. We have Scott Blake. He is the executive director. And Scott, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today.
For starters, give us a little context. When you talk about Victorian Village, let's start with kind of the boundaries geographically, and then we'll dive into some of the history.
Okay. Danny Thomas is our boundary to the west that we share with several other organizations, MMDC, Downtown Memphis Commission. Then we take in both sides of Madison Avenue, Manassas, where we join the hospitals and the university, and then both sides of Poplar Avenue. So, for instance, St. Mary's Cathedral is included in the boundaries.
Talk about starting the Victorian Village CDC 2006. Give us kind of a little bit of a lesson on just coming together for the preservation and safety and everything in between.
Well, back then we were kind of a forgotten neighborhood. You know, you'd look at the bird's eye view and you would see a lot of exciting things happening at St. Jude and downtown and the medical district. But we were kind of a forgotten neighborhood. So a lot of the business stakeholders, the very handful of residents that live here, got together and said, what can we do to sort of make our voices heard and become part of this energy that's already beginning to bloom? So we started the Community Development Corporation in 2006, and I was a volunteer chairman at the time for about 2 or 3 years, and then I became the paid staff member a few years later.
Give us an idea when you talk about just kind of the overall mission and purpose. There's community development, historical preservation, neighborhood master planning, safety, kind of those are the core ingredients, but talk about the mission and the purpose overall.
Well, we started out with an incredible asset that nobody else had, and that was our huge collection of 19th century architecture. And again, they weren't being promoted to the point they should have been. For instance, the Mallory-Neely House, built in the 1850s, had been closed for 7 years at that time. It was still under the management of Pink Palace, but for budgetary reasons, they had to close that. And the same with the James Lee House, that's now a very famous bed and breakfast. It was owned by the city, but had been locked up for 70 years and was falling to pieces, basically. And we were able to go to the mayor and arrange to have him sell the property for $1 in order to put it back on the tax rolls. Just a small aside, it cost them $2.5 million to fix it up. So it wasn't free.
Sure.
But it's those kind of activities that we started with, and then realized we needed to do a lot more sympathetic infill housing if we were going to make this very walkable neighborhood that really serve the medical district in downtown. So that's been one of our primary goals, is encouraging those existing multifamily residential and new infill, as well as building some single families. So we had a real diverse income level within the community.
You mentioned Mallory-Neely House in that museum and then James Lee Home. Talk about some of the other cultural assets, because to your point, there are a lot of cultural assets in Victorian Village. So give us kind of a highlight of some of the other ones.
Well, even in that small geographic area, there's 22 properties listed on the National Register. And we talk about St. Mary's Episcopal Church, which was the very epicenter of the yellow fever epidemic. Collins Chapel, the first African-American church in Memphis, founded as an offshoot from the First Methodist Church downtown. There's one I want to come back to if we can, and that's the Pillow-McIntyre House. It's now an attorney's office, but was at one time home for General Gideon Pillow, being restored right now. It's in the middle of a restoration. And one of my favorite spots, Mollie Fountain's Lounge, which was built as a wedding present for the Woodruff-Fountaine family, right across the street. And up until they had to close down the bars, it was my favorite place in town, because I jokingly tell people I can walk there and crawl home. That's how close it is. And even my house, I have a house that was built in 1867, a real typical Italianate townhouse. I say typical, they were typical then, now they're not. After urban renewal in the 1960s and early 70s, many of these historic properties were bulldozed because they'd just fallen into such disrepair. Now there's maybe 4 left in the city.
Wow. Go ahead and bounce back and talk about the recent renovations on your end.
Well, on the Pillow-McIntyre House, there's about a $300,000 renovation going on there, made possible in large part by the Downtown Memphis Commission Exterior Renovation Grant Program, and also funding from MMDC. So it was in a very sad state of affairs. After Hurricane Elvis, one of the main columns fell off the house and laid in the grass for 2 years. And as we were doing the renovation, we actually peeled back several layers of porch roofing and discovered that the house was probably 10 years older than we even thought. It had been listed on the National Register as being built about 1851, but it was really closer to 1841. Like the Hunt-Phelan House and several others, they were federal facades originally, and then they went back and added those Greek portico style facades known as Greek Revival.
When you look at kind of the history side of this, I've got to believe you got some amazing stories to tell yourself of just the history. Give us maybe just one of your favorites in terms of, it could be related to any one of these homes or museums or just the district overall, but what's kind of one just favorite history story that goes along with this?
You know, my favorite story is probably the ghost stories that happen here at my house. I don't know exactly who they are, but this place is very, very haunted. There's 5 of my friends here that show up on a weekly basis. And it's gotten to the point where a lot of national ghost hunters come. And I've even had people check out in the middle of the night saying they couldn't take it anymore. But to me, they always show up as wonderful presents, especially after big events and parties that I have here.
That's pretty cool. So talk about on your end, a grant that is related to sanitization and disinfectant. Kind of paint the picture of why that's so important and what that is.
Well, in the end of March, when everything shut down, our board of directors got together and said, we don't see a continuing income stream for the organization. So as a group, we made the decision to furlough the 2 staff, me and the associate director, indefinitely. So we just put everything in a freeze mode. And I continued as a volunteer to write grant applications. And there was a major grant that came from the state of Tennessee as part of the CARES Act, the COVID mitigation, for close to $500,000. And we made an application for that, for the specialized cleaning service and sanitation service, to go in and treat every business and residence in the entire boundary. So it was a really big scope. And when we weren't successful in receiving that grant, we said, well, where is the greatest need? And it was in the 11 homeless shelters and support facilities that are in the neighborhood. And, you know, most neighborhoods wouldn't say, look, we welcome this type of nonprofit, but for us, it's part of our legacy. And some of the best work happens out of this neighborhood. Union Mission, Hospitality Hub, and the smaller ones too. So we went back to Housing and Community Development and asked for a grant of about $45,000 to do a 6-month treatment where we go in and once a month we do a standard treatment where we spray and then go back with a disinfecting layer. But also, if they have an individual incident of COVID infection, within 12 hours, we have a rapid response team that goes in and treats not only the space that they were living in, but also the adjoining spaces. So it's an added layer of comfort and security for people who have nowhere else to go. They can't go up in their attic or go in their basement and video chat.
Carry that forward on your end in terms of the ability to, like you're saying, take care of your neighbors, take care of those who need it most. And at the same time, on your end, when you look at having to make the decision of being furloughed, you're dealing with a lot of challenges, but at the same time, trying to still take care of your neighbors and put them first. And so talk about just kind of that spirit, I think, that really permeates Memphis overall. That's one of the things that I love the most is the spirit of generosity, but taking care of the neighbors, even to the detriment of your own. So it's like, talk about kind of that spirit of just, Victorian village, but yet coming together, rallying, and that sense of community that you're creating.
Well, after we made the decision to furlough, we were all just sitting around our hands. We felt like we didn't have the ability to do anything because we lacked the ability. Our work is all about person-to-person contact, and we were no longer able to do that and have community events, and our tourism sites were closed. So we had to start thinking really creatively about where to go from here and how we could do the most good.
What does 2021 hold? Because to your point, when you look at kind of rounding out 2020, but stepping into 2021, what are some of the plans or objectives on your end?
Well, we're filled with hope that, toward the end of spring, we will be able to start with the vaccine and the other mitigation efforts to start gathering again. So that would mean reopening the museum houses. As a in between, we're even going to start walking tours that are only 8 people at a time, masked, socially distanced, and talk about the exterior architectural elements and tell the story about the people who lived here. The story about Sister Constance and her companions, the nuns at St. Mary's, and they fought and gave their lives during the yellow fever epidemic. All that is really appropriate stuff to tell, and the fact that there was resiliency then and hope then, and there still is now.
Absolutely. And then when you look at how can the community help? So, I mean, obviously what you're talking about in terms of the walking tours and taking advantage and kind of stepping back in and pouring in, but what are some of the ways we can help your efforts?
We are partnering with Memphis Medical District Collaborative to start a job creation program where the jobs actually originate in the neighborhood. They go through training where they're paid a real wage while they're going through the classes. And then they're already in line to have jobs that are waiting for them in the hospitals and the universities here, where they don't even have to have a car to perform their jobs. So we're planning to really kick that into high gear when we can start having more interaction.
What's something that puts a smile on your face when you look at creating the organization in 2006, when you look at the restoration projects and the revitalization, and then the master plan that you all are creating? What puts a smile on your face?
When, again, in 2006, this was a ghost town. And gradually, there's a lot of new residential housing coming online. One that's been in the works for a while is a partnership between UT and Henry Turley. So when you see people out walking their dogs and the crowd that is over at Sunrise Memphis, right across the street from my house, even now, they're all spaced out. But to see that 24-hour life coming back is really something.
I know that Sunrise Memphis, that's a big spot that so many people enjoy. And so to your point, to be able to see people out congregating and walking and taking advantage, and I'm excited for these walking tours like you're talking about. Wrap up and talk about website, social media. Where do we go to learn more and be in the loop on the upcoming events and the opportunities to plug in and ways to help?
Right. Well, go to our website, victorianvillageinc.org, and you'll be able to catch up on a lot of things, and also just in retrospect see the big plans that are in the works now about Jefferson Avenue Parkway, which is an incredible plan that's coming up very soon that turns Jefferson into more of a pedestrian and bicycle corridor that goes from Front Street all the way to Cleveland, which will be a big generator for businesses, commercial, and great for Sunrise. And the same sort of thinking is in the works with Poplar Avenue too. There's a large planning group put together with Looney Rick's Kiss and the city of Memphis and many of the neighborhood stakeholders. There's probably 15 participating in that plan. And it has a lot of hope to it as well.
Nice.
And both of them are funded now. So, that's just to say they're funded. Morris Park is about to go under a major renovation. And that's funded by the Uptown TIF and the CRA, about $1.6 million in renovations to that park, badly needed.
We'll wrap up and tell them again the website and where to go.
www.victorianvillageinc.org. So the ink is really important, or it'll take you to some sort of Christmas card shop in Wisconsin.
So victorianvillageinc.org. Scott Blake, Executive Director, Victorian Village CDC. Thank you for all you do. Greatly appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much.